You don't have to answer this, but please raise your hand if you feel that you wouldn't be able to make it to a new place without a GPS. Okay, thank you. Like any other technical device that has advanced our society, a GPS has impacted us in both positive and negative ways. When I was growing up and my family would take long trips on vacation, my dad would have me read the map along the way so that I could develop map reading abilities. So when GPSs became very popular, I wondered, what's the difference between looking at a map and getting the directions yourself and looking at a GPS and it telling you the directions? So I decided to do some research. Our brains are very powerful devices. Well, they're actually just simply a body part, but they're very powerful in that they help us a lot with spatial ability. Spatial ability is when you can take an area, whether big or small, and find the connections within it. As college students, we will one day need to navigate a new area, so I will share with you the possible causes and effects of using a GPS while driving. First, I'll go into the detail about your brain and your spatial ability. Then I will talk about the decision that people make when they choose to drive, and also I'll talk about a possible effect of using a GPS. As I said, our brain is very powerful. On October 5th, 2006, in Hippocampus, a scientific journal, a study was done at the University College in London in which they looked at taxi drivers and found that their brains have more gray matter in the hippocampus than the control group. A hippocampus is a part of your brain in which you store spatial memory and also you store long-term memory. Another study was found and published on February 2nd, 2012 in Psychological Science, and the study found that people in a familiar area actually can have a mental map of that area that's oriented north like a normal map. So this Julia Frankenstein, the one who conducted that study, published on February 2nd, 2012 in the New York Times the same day, an opinion article in which she stated that our brains have mental maps of familiar areas and we can make mental maps of new areas that we want to explore. The way we do this is that we take landmarks and we find connections between these landmarks in new areas, and we use that to find the detours and shortcuts along the way. When the GPS was created, it allowed drivers to simply go from point A to point B in a fashion that didn't require us to develop those cognitive maps along the way. And because of that, a study that was published on November 11th, 2010 in an MSNBC online article said that drivers have two options when they go to drive. First is the spatial navigation strategy. That's what Frankenstein was talking about, in which people take those landmarks and find the detours along the way and build that cognitive map. The second is the stimulus response strategy, in which the drivers are kind of go into an autopilot mode, and they simply go from point A to point B, and they don't really build the cognitive maps along the way. Now, I'm sure that none of you have actually turned off your brains while driving, but not using your brains fully can lead to long-term effects. In the same MSNBC article, McGill University found, as neuroscientist Veronique Bonebot said, that a downgrade to the hippocampus, remember the hippocampus is where we store that spatial ability, a downgrade to that can actually lead to a risk factor of Alzheimer's disease. Today you've learned something new about your hippocampus, or your brain, or spatial memory. Also, you've been introduced to the two types of driving strategies. Lastly, you've learned about a possible effect of strictly using a GPS while driving. Now, when you go and explore that new area, you know that the decision between using a map or using a GPS goes a lot deeper than simply learning directions.